Hey guys, welcome to Creepers, Cryptid and Paranormal Corner. Episode 3 is going to be about an encounter I had with a creature out fishing early one morning. This was on a different river system. I never knew what the creature was at first, but since the encounter I've had another encounter, and believe it or not, it's a Dogman. Yeah, a Dogman in Western Sydney. To be completely honest, before the encounter I thought the whole Dogman craze in the US was a complete joke, and I used to laugh about it all the time. People talking about seeing werewolves, and the photos and the videos you'd see, like there was no real good evidence that actually made you believe it. So I used to just think it was a joke. But as you'll find, my thoughts on the whole Dogman have completely changed. They are there. They are out there. They are in Australia, and from what I've encountered, they're smart. They'll intimidate you. They'll stalk you, and they aren't afraid to show themselves in the daylight hours. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they accounted for a lot of the missing persons in the Australian bush or even across the globe. I left the house about 10 past 5. That way I could grab a coffee, head over there. The drive was about 30 minutes from my place. As I was saying in previous episodes, I don't really like fishing the early darkness anymore after the Yowie bluff charges. So the plan was to head off about 10 past 5, like I was saying. I'll grab a coffee, grab something to eat at Macca's. I'll head off. That way I could get there and get all my gear unloaded and sorted out and be in the water around 6 o'clock. I pulled into Macca's, realised shit, I forgot my wallet. I'll never forget my wallet. Always grab a coffee on the way, and I've always got my wallet because of my fishing licence in it. So after heading home with the shits, I grabbed it and grabbed my coffee and headed off to the spot. The whole way over, I was thinking about another spot to try for the next trip. The spot I was thinking about was actually a spot my father-in-law was telling me about. He used to go swimming there when he was growing up. He said I should check it out one day, and yeah, but I didn't really know. I wasn't really sure where it was, so I thought next trip, that's what I'm doing. I'm going there. Anyway, I was almost at the spot as the last trip, and actually driving down the street and realised the gates are locked again. Fucking hell. First I forgot my wallet. Now the gates are locked again 2 days in a row. They're never locked. This is bullshit. This is when I thought, fuck it. I'm looking up this spot my father-in-law was talking about, and I'm going over there. So I found it on my phone, and it wasn't that far off from where I was now. Um, as I got there, the gates were open, which I didn't understand. This is the same council. Why is the gate open but not at the other spot? It's only about 5 minute drive from here. Yeah, what the fuck's going on? Now, when I drove through the gate, this is when it got really odd. As I drove through the gate, my Spotify that was playing my on repeat playlist, which I've got downloaded, so if I lose service, then I can still listen to it. It decided to spaz out and it skipped to a song that I don't have on my Spotify, let alone on this particular playlist. It started singing the words, "You know this is a bad idea." I thought to myself, what the fuck, that's weird, and even to this day I haven't been able to find that song that played. So I pulled up the parking spot and grabbed my kayak off the ute, grabbed all my fishing gear out, started to head for the water. I started to hike down to the water and realised I'd forgotten my GoPro, so I had to run back to the car and I grabbed it, and then started to trek back down to the water. Seeing as I'd never been to this spot before, I didn't know what I was actually in for, and once I got down a bit, I realised I had about 500 metres of stairs to get down to the bottom. Once I got down to the bottom, I had to do a bit of bush bashing and stuff like that to get the kayak to the water. I finally got down by the river and just had to climb down some rocks and finally had the kayak in the water. Got all my fishing gear all set up, chucked my GoPro on my chest mount, hopped in the kayak. Shit, I'm not floating. The water was actually that shallow that the kayak was hitting the rocks on the bottom. So after a good 10 minute struggle dragging myself across all the rocks and that, I actually finally got to a spot that it was deep enough that I could start floating down the river. I trekked down from the car into the water, getting through the shallows and that took about 30 minutes, so I was actually rooted and hoping the trip would be worth it. My first cast with the surface lure was crazy. I was retrieving the lure back to the kayak and had at least 5 bass at the same time trying to take it. Like it was just crazy. I'd never seen that before. I hooked one of them. It was only little, but took a quick picture and chucked it back in and kept fishing. Every cast I made, the same thing happened. It was crazy. I still couldn't believe how many fish were in this spot. After the trek down to the water, and all the effort I had to go through to get to this section, I wouldn't have been surprised if no one had fished this section for a very long time in a kayak, maybe if not ever. And the bush either side of the river was that thick, you wouldn't even be able to go along it by foot and fish. So it was just crazy. It was like it was untouched, like no one had ever been there before. After about half an hour, I'd been fishing. I landed 5 and I'd probably lost double that. The river finally started to widen out a bit and the fish were getting a lot bigger. as I was bringing a fish in and that, I realised up ahead on the left side of the river, I actually seen a grey flash through the bush, and I thought that's really odd. But once I looked up to have a look properly, there was nothing there. I just thought it was really odd. I thought my eyes might have been playing tricks on me, but I'll get into this a bit more in the next episode with the second encounter with the Dogman. I fished along the river for a bit more, and the river started to narrow up and narrow down again. I noticed a massive rock. It was actually sticking up out of the water, up on the left hand side, and I thought, yep, there's definitely got to be a bass around that. So I started to head towards it to check it out. The river was so quiet. It was just real creepy. Hey, like there's nothing going on other than every now and then a cockatoo would be going nuts, up ahead of me on the right hand side in the trees. But other than that, it was good. It was so good to be on the river and not having to worry about anything, nothing happening, and I could just enjoy fishing. As I got near the rock I wanted to have a cast at, I noticed the river up ahead took a right hand turn out of sight, and it looked like it widened right out. So I started getting pretty excited about checking that out after this rock I was going to have a cast at. Anyway, I had a cast at the rock, and before I even started to retrieve the lure, I got smashed by a bass, and I hooked it up. I started fighting it back to the kayak. This is when everything just turned to shit. Something on the right hand side bank, up where the river took that right hand turn out of sight, started smashing the trees, and I just froze. I was like, what the fuck is that? The creature, whatever it was just going crazy. It was just smashing everything. This is when I heard it started to run towards me through the bush. All the cockatoos in the area just started going crazy, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? As it ran, it was smashing all the trees, all the bushes. It just sounded like a bulldozer coming through the bush towards me. It was fucking huge, and it was sprinting, and I could tell it was running on 2 feet. I thought I was done for. This part of the river I was at, it was that narrow. I reckon if I had a clear run from the bank, I could have easily jumped and landed in the kayak. And this thing, how big it was and how crazy it was going, how fast it was running through the bush, I don't even think it needed a clear run to get to me. I quickly wound the fish into the side of the kayak, and the creature stopped just out of sight and started roaring at me. Now the roar was just blood curdling. I'd never heard anything like it in my life, and it was something like a lion. And then you'd hear it take a big breath in to roar again, and the odd thing was that breath in actually was just as loud as the roar, and it sounded like a bear. Every time it roared, I could honestly feel it in my chest, and it was fucking huge. I honestly thought I was dead. I tried acting like that I didn't notice what was going on. I pulled the fish out of the water, started taking the hooks out of it, so I could chuck it back and head for the car. The cockatoos were just still going batshit crazy at this stage, and it made me think, fuck, is that why they were going off before when I was paddling up to this area? Like, did they know what was up here? I finally got the hooks out and chucked the fish back in the water, and this is when the creature went to a whole nother level. Its roars got that much louder, and while it roared at me, it was just standing there smashing all the bush around, which set the cockatoos off even more. This is when I heard a voice in my head, leave now, or you'll die. What the fuck is going on? I turned my kayak around, as easy as I could, still trying to act like I didn't know what was going on. Slowly started to paddle off towards the car. This creature just stood there, smashing shit out of everything around it, and it was just still roaring like crazy. Like, I could just feel it in my chest, and I can still hear it on my ears now, like just sitting here talking about it. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. It was just roaring like absolute crazy, like it wanted to kill something. And I kept paddling. I got out, I was probably just out of sight of where it all had happened, and it just stopped. Nothing, not even a twig snap, let alone the bush being smashed to pieces, or the creature roaring off its head. My heart was just in my throat. Fuck, I still got to paddle back to the shallows, get up the rocks, get back up the stairs, and get the ute. I don't have anything to defend myself. Like, if shit hits the fan, I'm fucked here. The most deadly thing I had in my kayak was a pair of long-nosed pliers. Honestly thought, I'm fucked. I'm not getting out of this. I'm not going to make it home. I'm going to die today. And I still have a 10-minute paddle back to the shallows. Finally paddled my way back to the shallows. I paddled back the whole way nice and slow, trying not to look like I was panicking, just trying to act like I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if the creature was still following me. I got across the shallows and up onto the rock, got all my fishing gear out of the kayak and dragged it out of the water. I grabbed my rods, chucked them up on the rocks, And as I went to go back down towards to get the kayak, something hit my rod with the lure I'd caught that fish on, and the rod actually fell over. I was like, uh-oh, fuck. There's something on the other side of the river in the bush throwing stuff at me now. Still not trying to freak out, trying to keep an eye on the opposite bank with my sunnies on so no one could see that I'm actually looking in that direction. I was just trying not to make it obvious. I grabbed my kayak, chucked it on my shoulder, jumped up the rocks, grabbed my fishing gear and headed for the car. Now usually I just drag my kayak back to the car. I'm not too worried about it and that, but I wanted to carry it to be a bit quicker, and so I didn't make any noise going through the bush towards the stairs and that, so I could keep an ear out for anything crossing the river up behind, like down behind me. Now I made it to the stairs, and like I was saying, it's pretty steep and it's about 500 metres from the car. And this one I thought, fuck it. I ran with the kayak on my shoulder and the fishing gear in my hands. I'm not dying here. I still don't know how I made it up to the car that fast and without having a heart attack. I chucked the kayak in the back of the ute, chucked my fishing gear in the car, and took my GoPro off. Hang on a minute. Took my GoPro off. Holy fuck, I'd recorded the whole thing. I ripped it off, dived in the car and started to watch the recordings. I'd actually turn it off and on a few times throughout the trip. From when I first got in the water and that, which I was spewing, I thought, oh great, I didn't have it on when it all happened. I watched a few videos, nothing. Then I got to one, as soon as I started to play it, I seen the rock I hooked the fish on before the creature charged me. I got about a minute into it before I actually hooked the fish, and you could hear the cockatoos going off like further up. I watched the whole thing about 10 times. You could just hear the creature roaring in the distance. You couldn't hear it smashing the bush up or smashing towards me or anything like that, but at least I could hear the roar. The GoPro, anyone that's worked with a GoPro, you'd know the audio on it's fucked unless you're actually sitting on top of the sound you're trying to record. But you could hear the roar and the massive inhale from just before the next roar. The whole time you could hear the cockatoos going crazy, but still you could hear the roar. As I was so shaken up from the encounter and having to run to the car and all that sort of shit, I just sort of sat there and thought about it all. So I thought, stuff it, and I jumped straight on the AYR website. This is the Australian Yowie website. I've actually been on there a few times, and I'd actually posted about my bluff charge I had with a Yowie, and I'd spoken to a few people, and I decided to message a bloke named Yowie Dan. I'd actually told him about the bluff charge and talked about it a bit more in detail, and another few other encounters I had on the same river. And yeah, so he was just really good to talk to about everything, and he's a real cluey guy when it comes to Yowies. Yowie Dan's probably one of the most experienced blokes in Australia to talk to about Yowies, because I'd never heard of the Dogman, and this was before the second encounter. I thought it might have been a Yowie. So yeah, I messaged him and just sat there thinking about everything that had happened. The next couple of weeks I'll probably get Yowie Dan on. He can tell us about a few of his experiences, encounters and that, like news I realised, like he knows what he's doing, and he's seen a lot of shit. So yeah, so I was sitting there in the car and I looked up animal sounds on my phone in the car on YouTube. I started listening to all the Australian animals. I listened to mating calls. I listened to the sounds they made when they're threatened. I listened from everything, koalas, possums, dingoes, everything, even buffaloes. Nothing was even close. The closest thing I find in the whole world, the closest thing to that roar, was an African male lion. But that wasn't even enough. It was close, but it still wasn't what I heard. And the second noise it made, that big inhale, all I could find on the internet or hear anything sounded anything like it was a grizzly bear. What the fuck is going on? I'm sitting there thinking the roar sounds like a lion, the deep breath, the inhale, roar, it sounded like a grizzly bear. We don't have lions, we don't have bears, and they sure as hell don't run on 2 feet and smash the place up like this creature did. What the fuck? What's the chances of having another Yowie encounter 30 minutes away on another river system? And what the fuck was that voice in my head? It wasn't my own thoughts, it wasn't my own voice. I said nothing, and I was too busy sitting there trying to concentrate on what the fuck was going on around me. It was a voice I'd never heard before saying, "Go now or you will die." Some people have said it might have been the creature somehow communicating with me, telling me to leave, like telepathically or something like that, which sounds unbelievable. But then again, look what's just happened. Then a couple of people that know part of my family goes back to the indigenous people, like of the area, suggest maybe I picked up from it from the bush. Was it one of my ancestors warning me? Was it because my family has once had a connection to this land? Who knows? None of it made sense. None of the things that had happened on the way down there. Not any of the stuff that happened during the encounter, and even coming back to the car. I ended up sitting in the car for about an hour before I felt good to drive. I was that exhausted. I just had real bad brain fog, and I was just knocked up from the whole encounter. Once I got home, I told the missus what had happened and showed her the video. She could just hear the roar. It made me so happy. Someone else could hear it, and I wasn't going crazy. But it was so hard to hear. Since then, I've actually put it on the computer and cleaned it up a bit so you can hear it a bit better. I've got a video on my YouTube page. It's actually got photos of this next encounter I'm going to talk about in the next episode with the Dogman. The photos I got, and at the end of that video, I've actually put these recordings I got that I've cleaned up on the end of that. So if you guys want to check it out, just Creepers Cryptid Paranormal Corner YouTube channel. And on there, I've actually got this original footage that I've gotten from this encounter too. So if you just want to check it all out. To this day, it's still got me all stumped. All the stuff that happened on the way over there. It sounds stupid, but I'll never forget my wallet. Even just the gates. To this day, I've not been over there and the gates have been locked. What are the chances the day before and that morning of the encounter, with only 2 days I've ever seen them locked? What's the chances I chose that other spot to go and check it out and then all this stuff happened? What's the chances the only time my Spotify ever fucks up and plays a song that's not in my playlist, let alone my whole Spotify, as I'm driving through the gates before this encounter? What the fuck was that grey flash I seen up ahead of me that morning as well on the river? I still have no answers to any of it. And that grey flash, in my next encounter, I actually see it again at a different section of the river before I had an encounter and got the photos of the Dogman. This Dogman creature must be massive. The way it just smashed through the bush, it was sprinting at me, just smashing the shit out of everything, smashing everything out of the way, and it was running as fast as any person on the planet could run on a running track. It's just scary. And how loud and deep the roars were for me to feel it in my chest like I was at a music concert is just ridiculous. How big must its chest and lung capacity to be able to roar like that? And again, why didn't this creature get me? Could have easily done it. I had no phone service, I had no weapons on me, there was no one around to help, and even I had phone service and I had time to ring someone, there's no way in hell I had time to call someone and then for them to get there to help me before I was gone. After what I experienced and the next encounter, like everything I've experienced with these creatures, I have no doubt these creatures mean business. There's no one on this planet that could stand a chance if one of these things come after you. Every time someone goes missing by a river or deep into one of our national parks, I have no doubt one of these creatures could be responsible. I've never actually really thought that about Yowies. Like, I've heard of a lot of bad shit, but I would not be surprised if people go missing, and if it's not normal shit, like someone hasn't murdered them, they haven't got lost to that, I reckon it'd come down to a Dogman, not a Yowie. And that's the main reason I wasn't worried about coming forward, like, and telling people about it. Maybe one day someone will go missing, and it might be enough that someone thinks to look in the bush instead of checking the river or something like that, and either save someone's life or at least maybe recover someone's body. Anyway, guys, so there you have it. That was the first encounter with what I now know to be the Dogman in Western Sydney. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be getting into my second encounter on the next episode, where I encounter the Dogman and actually take photos of it. So I hope you enjoyed it. Until then, don't forget to check out my videos on my YouTube account. And thanks for listening to Creepers, Cryptid and Paranormal Corner. Keep safe out there, guys. Cheers.